our next speaker is Lee Turner from the Nevada Department of Wildlife. We'll be talking about how NDOW has collaborated with BLM and used AIM data for some of their projects. So thank you, Lee.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what NDOW is doing with AIM. First, let me I have a background in botany and plant ecology, and the only reason I say that is to illustrate that I'm not a game biologist who can identify 3 grasses. And I'm not, Alan's here to laugh, and my boss, and not putting down all of our game biologists, but so yeah, there's some of them here too. So I'm leaving now, quickly. And I'm just going to, I'm going to talk a little bit about why NDOW is using the AIM method, what we're doing to monitor some habitat restoration and fire reseeding and other types of projects. I've got one slide where I've got a little bit of a question for everybody, sort of a social commentary on who applies for my jobs. How many AIM crew members are there, or past or previous? You had a couple? Okay, and that fits right into my demographic. Great. So when I put the slide up there, you'll see what I mean. So about 9 years ago, I got hired at the Department of Wildlife to get a habitat restoration project, a program started. And one of the things that I have done in my career is help with big picture vegetation sampling to help support whatever you're doing on the landscape. And I've done this in the Arctic, the Alpine, the Western U.S., and a lot of different places. And there are a lot of similarities in those places and a lot of differences, but one of the things that I wanted to get started on right away was a monitoring program. And so I got, this was about the time that Mark Coca at the State of Nevada BLM office was getting the AIM moving. So he and I met, and I kind of decided that it would make a lot of sense to do the same basic measurements that the BLM was going to be undertaking across Nevada, so that our data would be compatible, and if people wanted to use it, they could use it. Where it's collected on BLM ground. We also work, and I'll show this in a minute, on other jurisdictions. It's just solid, simple, repeatable measures. There's no rocket science involved in a lot of this, and I like that. You need to teach people how to identify plants, and that's critical, but the other things they're just easy and repeatable. So a couple of things that we do different. We do the line point intercept, we do the gaps, we do the basic suite of measures. We do a density measurement that's a little bit different than what I think some of the AIM crews do, where we identify woody plants on belt transects and put them into size categories. And that has a lot to do with recruitment. So after a fire, I'm interested in how many tiny sagebrushes there are. And then 2 years later, I want to know how many of those tiny sagebrushes went away and how many of them turned into a slightly larger sagebrush. And 10 years down the road, how many of those medium-sized ones are now, and we're measuring that kind of thing. We're also measuring trees, and we put trees into size categories based on diameter root crown. You can't do DBH with junipers. I mean, they're really just a shrub, but people call them a tree. So that's a slightly different measure, and that's really appropriate to a lot of our game management, also our non-game management, where we're concerned with songbirds, lizards. There are a variety of other things. That the structure in the shrub canopy is really important, and understanding how that changes through time can help you understand a lot about how populations of things like a Buick's wren or something that most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about. Something else we're going to be doing coming up is some high-resolution drone imagery at some of our monitoring sites. So we want to we'd still do the 50-meter transects that's in the spoke design, 0, 120, and 240 degrees. So if you draw a circle around that, it's about 2.3 acres. And we want to get some high-resolution maps of some of our plots pre-treatment, and then get those same high-resolution maps post-treatment so we can really quantify the change in the structure of the canopy. One of the other things that's a little bit different, we do a slightly different sample design, and I'm going to show you a picture in a little bit. We concentrate lots and lots and lots of plots at a project site, and they're going to be treated versus non-treated so that we can do we can compare the treatment to the controls, and then we can also do a pre and post-treatment, both in the controls and the treated, and get all kinds of different comparisons. And then we come back multiple times. We try to get 2 to 3 years pre-treatment, Not always possible, but where it's possible, we've done it, and that really helps you understand interannual climate variation as compared to the trees you cut down. But typically, our projects, or the vast majority of the projects I work on, are pinyon and juniper treatments. I mean, that's, you know, one of our #1 habitat issues across the Great Basin, part of the Great Basin that I work in. So this is a slide that actually the top item there is a slide that I use in a lot of talks I give to groups that don't necessarily understand why one would want to monitor. I don't think I have to convince this group, but I love the term anecdata. You know, I don't like it. I would rather have some pictures or some evidence or something that somebody measured through time rather than just sort of, I think I kind of remember, or it looks great. What does that mean? So at oh, and I'm sorry, I skipped over soils. We don't do soil pits like the AIM crews do. We do cores. So I have a crew that is out with a great big auger, and they do a 90-centimeter core, and we divide that into 15-centimeter increments, and we're analyzing those 15-centimeter increments, predominantly the first 3 as you move down the soil column, for a variety of things that really are working with Ben Rao, who is a scientist that worked with the Sage Step project. And what we're really interested in is, what do those soils tell us about cheatgrass? What's the likelihood we're going to get cheatgrass on this site? How do we, you know, that's really kind of the central question to the soil core measures we're taking. So I should have mentioned that. I apologize. That's a difference too. Learning from the project work is a big one. And I think that with the AIM data, the data that my crews are collecting, there are other efforts that are out there. There's ESNR program, there's Dave Pike's chronosequence, there are other data efforts, data collection efforts, and I think we're really beginning to learn a lot about what happens after fires and pinyon juniper treatments, meadow fencings, and a variety of other things. What you see on this map is these are the spread of the points that my crews have been working on, and that represents about 2,000 individual collection points, each with their 3 50-meter transects. Oh, we still do the 50-meter transects. I think AIM has largely gone to 25. I prefer people to have to wade through 50 meters of pinyon juniper with the tape. I think you learn a lot. So it's not changing. I do work for the Nevada and California BLM. You can see that we have plots down here. That's the bi-state sage-grouse region for those that aren't from out here. And we have an agreement with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Bishop BLM, and the Inyo National Forest, and we do a lot of the project monitoring work down there. So it's across the state line, but the issues are completely relevant to because it's bi-state sage-grouse, the issues in those habitat projects are entirely relevant to Nevada. You know, a lot of the ranchers in this area have allotments on both sides of the state line, so the issues are completely relevant. We've just recently started working with Great Basin National Park. There was the fire in the north end of the park 2 years ago, the strawberry fire, and we did a lot of the seeding. And so my crews are doing a lot of the monitoring work on that fire, and we're going to expand that. We're going to be working with the park a lot more in the future, which I'm really glad about. We do work on private land, and that's the only data that I'm not happy to share with anybody. That has to be, you need to know that landowner and have an individual agreement with that person, or I'm just, you know, it's just kind of I'm not sharing the data policy. And that's really about the only place we sort of have a hard line, and I think everybody understands why that's an important thing. Some reasons why we would get involved with this. It gives NDOW a larger role in projects. We really have an elevated seat at the table in how projects move forward. In particular on BLM ground, there's so much BLM ground in Nevada, that's where most of the habitat projects are taking place. Training opportunities for young people, that's my personal reason. I think it's really critical to get young people involved in natural resource management. I think people wouldn't necessarily head in this direction, but I think it's really important, and I think these programs, mine and AIM and others, give young people an opportunity to get out and really learn something about the habitat. And then just learning about results of treatments. So I'm just going to show you a couple of quick before and afters, and then I'll get to my little social commentary, and then I'll get into a specific project. Sam's here. It's out on the Desatoya Mountains on the Smith Creek Ranch and their allotments. This is a before and after in the pine nuts down in Buckskin Valley. This is a low elevation, low precip site. Pinyon and juniper encroachment site. You can see in 2011, we had the pre-treatment condition, and then this is 2015. We'll be revisiting this site this year for further data. One of the things I wanted to illustrate that we're only about, and you can't really read that one, but we're only about 10 days difference in when we monitor. So we try to come back to the plots at the same time every year. I'd love to be able to set a crew out and measure every week a plot through the season, but that's just not reality of trying to do hundreds and hundreds of points across the season. It's a trade-off, and it's the reality of the work. This is also in the Pine Nut Mountains, and where's the guy that just gave the talk on the fire? Okay, this is the first year after the seeding and the fire, and if everybody had said, well, that's total failure, you've got nothing but prickly poppy and some weeds, and walked away, I don't know that we would have learned what we could have learned, because this is what it looked like last year, and that's our seeded species. And we participated in, and we supplied a lot of the funding for the seeding on this particular fire and working with the Carson City BLM. And so we're handling some of the ES&R monitoring. I think the part of the lesson is don't walk away too quick. And yeah, you may need to do multiple treatments, but every fire doesn't fail. Every seeding just doesn't fail. Sometimes it takes a little time. And I haven't been on the Rush Fire recently, so I don't know what it looks like now. So here's my social commentary scene. This is my garage. This is the end of the season last year, our party where I get all the crew members together and we cook salmon and a bunch of hamburgers and stuff. Can anybody pick out, also all the people that raised their hand, what's the bias? It's all women. And it's like this every single year. It's 80% of my crews, the applicant base and what ultimately gets hired. And when you raise your hands, it's the same ratio in here. And I don't understand that to save my life. If I was 19 and read this job ad, I'd have been all over it. Camping for 8 days at a shot in the middle of nowhere in Nevada, learning about plants. You know, you're out there in the boonies with 3 other people having a great time. You know, in a lot of cases, you get to, hang out with people like Sam at the Smith Creek Ranch and, lots of other nice people. And I think it sounds like a great job, but I don't know what guys are doing. They're playing Xbox. Yeah, that's exactly right. I got a 12-year-old. He just wants to sit around with that stupid thing and drives me bats. So all the guys, we should all be ashamed. Yeah. Anyway, they're great, and I've been, super lucky. Every year we get just amazing people, and we get a ton of great data and a ton of work done, and every year we set out a number of plots for them to survey, and every single year they blow that just completely out of the water and really surprise me. And, towards the end of the season, they're just cranking. So let me give you one quick project example here. I'm going to focus in on the Desatoya Mountains real quick. This is the layout for the BLM Carson City District is managing a bunch of habitat restoration and improvement projects here, largely focused on sage-grouse habitat. What you're looking at is the black triangles are LEX. These red circles are GPS collar information for sage-grouse. The green squares are my monitoring points. These blue ones are some monitoring points that were in support of a Pinyon Jay nesting study the Great Basin Bird Observatory did. And then you can see some sort of transects that are kind of, I don't know what color that is, mauve, that the Great Basin Bird Observatory did, also looking at songbirds. So we're trying to understand how songbirds respond to some of the treatments as well as the vegetation. So we've got a lot of things that we're monitoring out here, trying to look at how these things respond to these pinyon and juniper removal treatments and some fencing type treatments. And what I'll say in general in the Desatoyas, the responses have been terrific. Really, really great responses, and I'll show you that in a second. Up here on some of the private land in Porter Canyon, the University of Nevada, Reno, Tamsin Stringham and her lab has been out there working for a while. Kira Snyder at Agriculture Research Service, Patty Nowak at the NRCS, they've been doing research on the private ground with, well, and Sam you did your master's there, right? Yeah, and he's the ranch manager at the Smith Creek Ranch now, which is all of this area. So we're putting the AIM method on the ground to look at these projects and really try to judge, okay, what's happening with the projects? And this is what I'm trying to do with some of the data. So I'm focusing, this is one of the projects, the Dalton Canyon project is one of the Desatoya landscape projects. And we have a number of control plots and a number of experimental plots. We break those up into, in this case, we break them up into sage-grouse habitat categories based on Pete Coates' USGS sage-grouse seasonal use. So we have some brood rearing and we have some nesting. In this particular treatment, there's no LEC treatment. So what we've done is then take Table 2-2, which is this column, out of the BLM RMP, the Land Use Planning Amendment, and also the U.S. Forest Service Habitat Assessment Framework, and pull out variables that we can pull out of the data. So we use the DEMA just like the BLM crews do. We can pull these variables out. So is the BLM RMP for brood rearing asking about sagebrush cover? And the answer is yes. And so we have some controls before and after. We have treated before and after. And we have a variety of other measures. And I don't want to wallow in the data. All I want to illustrate is that one of the things I'm trying to do is fit sage-grouse data where the project has a sage-grouse focus, fit the data we're getting into the Table 2-2 and other things that managers could use to make, some sort of an assessment. Did the project have the effect? And in this case, and I'm not going to wallow in these numbers, but yeah, the answer is the Dalton Canyon project has improved sage-grouse habitat tremendously. And I fully expect to see GPS information on birds that is going to reflect that in the coming years. One number that's really makes me look great but is not true is, where is it? Perennial grass height in the treated went from 16.3 centimeters or 16.1 centimeters to 39.1 centimeters. And we've got 2 meadow plots that fall within that treatment. And so the reason I'm saying there's a caution sometimes in some of these data too. You really have to drill down and look at the individual plots, and I'm going to show you that one. Those 2 plots fall within this meadow and a meadow that's slightly uphill. This is a result of horse management. It has a little bit to do with flexibility that the Smith Creek Ranch has on their cows as well. But this is the result of horses being excluded. So I'd love to tell you that our pinyon juniper project had a great effect on a meadow, but this is really getting horses out of this, which is an enormously positive effect in my opinion. I'm sorry, how much? I don't even know exactly. I have a minute left. I haven't given this talk before, so I was trying to kind of time myself. I have several talks that I give a lot, but this isn't one of them. One of the other things I'm doing, and you can kind of see, this doesn't show up as well as I thought, there's some purple points, and I have a master's student in Beth Ledger's lab, as you can see Cody here. She's taken some of our data at a like ecological site across the state, and she's trying to do sort of a larger analysis of the effects to the vegetation of these pinyon and juniper removal treatments. So we're trying to really take the AIM methodology, the data we're collecting, and get something out there into the peer-reviewed literature as well as into managers' hands. So we're trying to do all kinds of different stuff using the AIM. So I think that's really what I had. So I'll take any questions. I think I've got a minute or so left. If anybody has one, Ed.
I have to ask you, monitoring's come a long way. I've had several cases, though, in the past few years where monitoring sort of led me astray, and I think one of them was because the monitoring was always done at a certain time of the season that wasn't paying attention to the learning curves, and you have periodic growth of plants throughout the season.
Right.
And another one was that I know monitoring costs money, but it ends, and within a few years, results that you would love to have publicized will not be because monitoring ends. So either one of those cases have given me reason.
I fully agree. I wish I could have crews that really accounted for phenology through the season at plots. And again, it's just difficult and it's not reality. And the plots that we're monitoring, we are monitoring them for many years down the road. So we need to monitor things for more than a year or 2 or 3. It needs to be 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. I mean, we work in a dry system. I've worked in other dry systems, and change doesn't happen quickly.
Don't give up on freezing hobby either.
Oh, I like, yeah, no, yeah, I know. No, I know, it's good. Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.